I think we can all agree that one of the most unanswered points of FNAF's lore is the true identity of Golden Freddy. Or at least it was, up until the release of some brand new content, such as the Man in Room 1280 and reanalysis of the Stitch Wraith. Today, I'm here to place my more or less final stance on the true identity of Golden Freddy, as I feel confident enough in my analysis to come up with some solid conclusions. Something to note is that it may be beneficial to watch MatPat's most recent FNAF video, as a lot of explanation from that video influences conclusions prompted in this video, though I do have a lot of interestingly original ideas that haven't been explored before, so without further ado, I present my final conclusions on Golden Freddy. So where this tangent really began was with the release of The New Kid, which was the third story in 1:35 AM. At the time, this story really left me confused, but my initial thoughts were on the concepts of Kelsey somehow being a projection coming from Cassidy, but that's actually incorrect. The main point of confusion from The New Kid was the fact that a blonde-haired kid named Kelsey got spring-locked in the Golden Freddy suit, but after closer inspection, the body had disappeared and been replaced by the body of a black, curly-haired kid. This kid was assumed to be Cassidy due to Cassidy being associated with having black hair and the Irish origins of the name Cassidy meaning curly-haired. Why the idea of Kelsey being a projection from Cassidy was incorrect is because of the confirmation that there are actually two spirits in the collective of Golden Freddy. For so long, everybody had been debating if Golden Freddy was the soul of the crying child or Cassidy, the fifth murdered child. But we had never considered the truth that Golden Freddy was in fact both. I know the idea sounds far-fetched at first, but it's actually very plausible due to connections recently made to the Stitch Wraith canon. The Stitch Wraith canon is a series of interconnecting stories in the Fazbear Frights books, which mainly focus on the journey of a certain creation. This creation is a Fazbear endoskeleton, which contains the souls of two children, Jake, who fell ill and likely died at his home, and Andrew, who was likely murdered by the Man in Room 1280, who is a stand-in for William Afton. Jake seems to be a stand-in for the crying child, with them both dying outside of a Fazbear Entertainment establishment from a more medical-related incident, while Andrew is our stand-in for Cassidy, being that they were both killed by William Afton and are very vengeful thereafter. It's funny, but with this realization, I think I noticed something that hasn't really been mentioned. In the Silverized trilogy, we hear about a long, black-haired girl named Cassidy, who is at one point murdered by William, but what was strange is that Golden Freddy had already had an identity in those books, which was the spirit of Michael Brooks. I think everyone had just assumed that Cassidy was linked to Bonnie due to Jeremy's absence in the books, but we had never considered that both Michael Brooks and Cassidy could both be inhabiting Golden Freddy. Now, that may all be some interesting ideas, but nothing specifically linking Cassidy and the Crying Child in the game universe. Though there's still one piece of FNAF material I haven't touched on yet: the Survival Logbook. The Survival Logbook is an employee handbook likely owned by Michael around the year of 1993. What's really important about the logbook, however, is the fact that there's a spirit leaving messages in the logbook. The spirit leaves a multitude of faded messages that are mostly questions leading to the eventual reveal that this spirit is named Cassidy through a secret code aligning with the book's activity word search. Now, while that may not be too interesting, the most important recent realization is that there are actually two spirits in the logbook, and I'm betting you can guess who the second one is. Something that was always a little strange about the logbook was the question, who is Cassidy talking to? It could be simply concluded that Cassidy is talking to Michael Afton, aka the older brother, but some of Cassidy's messages don't exactly line up with what we know about Michael. As an example, Cassidy asks, "Does he still talk to you?" referring to the FNAF 4 Fredbear plush, and blatantly says, "The party was for you," referring to the Bite of 83 and confirming that the crying child is also a spirit in the logbook. If you still don't believe me, then take a look at this. It's a spirit saying, "I can hear the sounds, it was for me," basically stating that this spirit knows that the party was for him, confirming that this second spirit is the crying child. You can tell that this isn't Cassidy since it's written in altered text instead of faded writing. So, just to summarize everything we've learned so far, Cassidy, aka the fifth murdered child, and the crying child are two spirits composing Golden Freddy, who also have a revealing conversation with each other in the survival logbook. Now, if you're thinking that maybe Cassidy is actually the name of the crying child, then take a look at this. Basically, since the crying child speaks through altered text, then that means he asks the alternate spirit, "Who are you and what is your name?" who responds with the code leading to the name Cassidy as a response to the crying child's questions. The faded text spirit also writes "my name" on any page containing a number leading to the name Cassidy, so there's no way Cassidy is the crying child. Linking back to the Stitch Wraith, the fact that Andrew isn't able to see seems to be a direct parallel to the survival logbook where the crying child states that he is also unable to see. Now, I know I previously stated that Andrew was parallel to Cassidy and not the crying child, but I still think that's true. My best explanation is that the roles are switched with Cassidy being in control of the body, while the crying child is more internal with a direct opposite of the Stitch Wraith. The characters' relations to each other really seem more based on character development and actions rather than their respective roles in the animatronics. This scenario actually works better since Cassidy was likely stuffed into the Golden Freddy suit, while the crying child has a more spiritual connection to the collective. Though the question still stands, how and why is the crying child a part of the Golden Freddy collective? This hasn't been talked about much, but I think I've found the answer that both solves the crying child's presence in Golden Freddy and possibly the most unanswered game in the franchise, FNAF World, since despite everyone's claims, FNAF World was never deemed non-canon. So, where this whole FNAF World connection begins is a small missable detail from the man in room 1280. In the man in room 1280, the spirit Andrew haunts a hospital where the body of the man is being kept. The man is our William stand-in, and since he likely murdered Andrew, his body is being kept alive by Andrew to eternally torment him inside of his own mind. What's really important about this story, however, is the fact that Andrew is seen wearing an alligator mask, which I believe is a clear parallel between Andrew and Old Man Consequences, who seems to take the form of an alligator. Now, that may seem like a stretch to associate two very separate characters, but let me redirect your attention to Ultimate Custom Night to specifically focus on the Vengeful Spirit, or the one you shouldn't have killed. Now, since it's blatantly obvious that in Ultimate Custom Night we play as William, it's also undeniable that the Vengeful Spirit must be Cassidy. The Vengeful Spirit can't be any of the original 4 murdered kids, since that wouldn't make much sense. It can't be Charlotte, because the Vengeful Spirit is shown to have a voice that differs from Charlotte's. And finally, it can't be the crying child, since technically, William didn't kill him. So that only leaves Cassidy.
This is how it feels, and you get to experience it over and over and over again, forever. I will never let you leave.
The others are under my protection. Hello in there.
One thing that I feel is worth noting before moving on to my main point is the idea that maybe the crying child and Cassidy are actually separated in Ultimate Custom Night, with Cassidy as the overseeing spirit, and the crying child acting as a casual enemy in the form of Withered Golden Freddy. Just another interesting example that works very well. So, getting back on topic, what's the importance of Cassidy being the vengeful spirit? Well, it cements that connection I made between Andrew and Old Man Consequences. There's a secret in Ultimate Custom Night where if you set Old Man Consequences to 1 and catch a fish in his distraction, you'll be taken to his lake as the Fredbear sprite, where he tells you to leave the demon to his demons and rest your own soul. Since we know that Cassidy is tormenting William and UCN, then that means Old Man Consequences is talking to Cassidy, and therefore connected to Andrew, though that's only the beginning of this massive connection tangent. So, based upon those connections I just made, it's basically confirmed that the little red bear sprite is actually Cassidy, which means that the same red bear from FNAF World is also Cassidy. Can you see how this is going to get interesting? So, Cassidy's red bear in FNAF World, right? Well, that also means that during most of the game, we play as Cassidy. So, how's that important? Well, it's time to take into consideration some lines spoken by Glitch Fredbear to Cassidy, though before we can fully analyze those lines, we first have to conclude who exactly is Glitch Fredbear. The FNAF World clock ending route has two different gameplay pieces that each reveal different things. The first part is both the beginning and the ending, where a mysterious set of eyes speaks to the recently deceased crying child, while the middle is a certain Glitch Fredbear giving instructions to Cassidy. Based upon evidence from both scenarios, it becomes apparent that the set of eyes and Glitch Fredbear are actually Charlotte, or the puppet, who was also the spirit speaking in the flatline ending of FNAF 4 as the Fredbear plush. The similarities between Glitch Fredbear and the Fredbear plush are visually obvious, but the similarities between the plush and the eyes seem to be more based upon their actions. In the ending of FNAF 4, Charlotte takes the form of the crying child's beloved Fredbear plush in order to gain his trust, and actually repeats some lines from that ending, such as "We're still your friends," and "I will put you back together." Though what really cements this is the shared eye and text color similarities between all three of them. Something that was always really weird about the Fredbear plush is that through every minigame but the final one, the plush talks in the text color #FFFF57, while in that final minigame, it speaks in the hex code #FFFFA0, which is a slightly lighter yellow tone, which matches very closely with Glitch Fredbear and the eyes in FNAF World. The speaker prior to Charlotte speaking in the ending is confirmed to be William, through the plushie being revealed as a surveillance device in Sister Location's private room, and William being linked to the color orange in both Midnight Motorist and Fruity Maze. So, I think with everything explained, it's time to finally get to the point of the clock ending, and how exactly the crying child became a part of Golden Freddy. So, in the beginning of FNAF World, Charlotte instructs the crying child that she will put him back together. But what does that have to do with Cassidy? Well, it relates to something very strange that Charlotte tells Cassidy as Glitch Fredbear. This is a safe place, a sanctuary. The truth is, there is no safe place. You don't understand that. You were made for one thing. What this line tells me is exactly what we needed to confirm the crying child's presence in Golden Freddy. This line isn't relating to Charlotte having created Cassidy, but in fact Charlotte having brought back Cassidy and creating Golden Freddy for one exact thing: the safety and well-being of the crying child's soul being housed within Golden Freddy. This idea is somehow so unexpected, yet works so well. It was apparent that the crying child was somehow important to Charlotte's plans for vengeance based on her presence during his death as the plush, for reasons I'll get into later, but it seems that Cassidy's separated soul created the perfect scenario for her to put the crying child back together with Cassidy as Golden Freddy. The other thing that's also incredible about this Golden Freddy Soul Collective idea is the fact that it solves so many questions and so much conflicting information, such as Golden Freddy's girlish laugh coming from Cassidy, which I'm assuming is a girl, and the signature "It's me" line coming from the crying child and being directed at his brother Michael Afton. To think that the game that we all dissed and ignored for so long contained such important lore relevance. Heck, this may even explain a question that I've pondered for quite a while, which is, why is Cassidy so vengeful? The obvious answer would be that she was involved in the immobile Golden Freddy suit and thus separated from her friends as the lost child, but it may actually be because of Charlotte's use of her. I'd be mad too if somebody brought me back just for the purpose of aiding some other soul. Just a possible explanation. Now, despite explaining so much already, I'm not done. Far from it, actually. In order to fully expand concepts surrounding this theory, I now need to propose valid explanations surrounding Shadow Freddy and the nightmare scenarios of FNAF 4. Now, a very interesting detail that I'm guessing a lot of people have missed is the fact that both Golden Freddy and Shadow Freddy always align with the models of regular Freddy. Now, you may think that we've never seen Shadow Freddy in any form but withered, but this is actually incorrect, since we see Shadow Freddy with both ears intact in FNAF 3's Springlock minigames, confirming a connection between Shadow and Golden Freddy. Now, another commonly missed detail relating to this conspiracy is again something shown in FNAF World. FNAF World has loading screens based upon just about every playable character, including renders and applicable quotes, but I feel Scott got very secretive and lore involved with the design of Adventure Shadow Freddy. Two interesting details about Shadow Freddy are his quote reading, "I will eat your soul," and the strange detail of his jaw being apparently broken. These two details, when applied together, seem to relate to the Crying Child, and specifically about the Bite of 83, where Fredbear's jaw would have likely ended up broken, and Fredbear having symbolically eaten the Crying Child's soul by killing him. So, where am I going with all this? Well, I have the suspicion that the Crying Child may be Shadow Freddy, but that doesn't mean he can't also be a part of Golden Freddy. It's actually relating to an idea that I proposed and then dissed earlier, relating to the new kid. I used the example of Kelsey being a projection from Cassidy as an example of what I got wrong, but it may actually support the idea of Shadow Freddy being a projection of the Crying Child. Since the Crying Child's role in Golden Freddy excludes him from the physical appearance, would it be too implausible for him to somehow gain the power to create a projection? The Crying Child is technically living in the shadow of Cassidy as the physical form of Golden Freddy, and him being both the literal and metaphorical shadow of Golden Freddy would make sense. Now, this is where the question I sought to answer earlier comes into play. What importance does the Crying Child have to Charlotte's plan? Well, it seems that the question gets primarily answered in those Springlock minigames from FNAF 3, where Shadow Freddy uses his spiritual form to lure the animatronics while staying invisible to William Afton. With the extreme likelihood that those Springlock minigames take place after the closure of the last Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in 1993, I would assume that in 1997, at the FNAF 2 location, the Crying Child has barely learned to control his projectional power, while by 1993, he has full control over the form of Shadow Freddy. It's so crazy to think of the tangents I've gone down just due to one simple confirmation, and while I've explained so much already, I've still got one last little tangent to explore that's on the topic of this video, just to express much related information as possible. It's time to talk about the FNAF 4 gameplay. This may seem like a weird place to jump to, but hear me out. I think FNAF 4 managed to confuse just about everybody, both minigame and gameplay-wise, but I think I've discovered a possible explanation for some oddities in the gameplay. The first thing to go off about is the confirmation from Sister Location that the Plush Trap hallway and gameplay bedroom are real locations with real animatronics that aren't a part of the Afton household due to their separation from them on the map. Now, relating to the animatronic inhabitants, it seems that the primary gameplay room has 4 animatronic endoskeletons with illusion discs projecting the respective nightmarish versions of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, plus the Freddles, while the Plush Trap hallway contains the unaltered Plush Trap animatronic, and occasionally Nightmare BB, which is likely just a regular balloon boy, but with an illusion disc altering its appearance, similar to the BB creatures depicted in the Twisted Ones. These two observational locations are likely additional rooms attached to the Sister Location facility, due to the appearance of mini-arenas in the Plush Trap hallway and Baby and Funtime Freddy wandering the halls of the primary bedroom in FNAF VR. Now, what's interesting about these rooms is that at one point they get used, but that scenario is not what we see in FNAF 4. Due to some behavior expressed by William Afton towards the Crying Child and the private room password of 1983, it's assumed that at one point or another, the Crying Child was taken down to the facility forcefully by William and got to experience the nightmarish illusions against his own will, as a form of punishment, really. I'm not exactly certain when or how the crying child experienced these observational rooms, but he may have at some point before his death. Now, with all that explained, it would have been weird to claim that the gameplay we see in FNAF isn't those scenarios if it weren't for one small detail included in the nightly ambience. The audio clip you're currently hearing is random ambience and background noise, but when reversed is actually a clip of the FNAF 1 phone call, and with the fact that Scott didn't fill FNAF 4 with random Easter eggs, it must be important. Well, I think an interesting detail from the survival logbook precisely pins down exactly who, when, and why these nightmares are happening. In Michael Afton's logbook, under a section relating to recent dreams, he draws a depiction of Nightmare Fredbear. Things get very speculative here, but consider this theoretical scenario. Michael Afton takes the night shift at Freddy's in 1993, and has run-ins with the animatronics, including his deceased brother the Crying Child as Golden Freddy. Either after his shifts or after his week is over, he begins to experience the nightmarish scenarios from the perspective of the Crying Child, basically being cursed with visions of these scenarios that their father forced his younger son into. These visions get a little blurry, being slightly mixed with memories of Phone Guy's phone call from Night 1, but majorly distorted. The nightmarish memories that the Crying Child forces onto Michael may just be to show him the true crimes of their father, but it may have also been payback and vengeance for him getting killed in the first place. Now, let me explain a little something that may lead to confirmation of the latter. Earlier, I showed off that the Sister Location's breaker room map with animatronics marked on the map, but one thing I left out was the fact that Nightmare and Nightmare Fredbear, which is one of the characters that Michael drew, is noticeably absent from the map. So where did they come from? Well, due to a little detail in the game files of FNAF 4, I've considered the idea that Nightmare and Nightmare Fredbear may actually be the Crying Child and Cassidy entering Michael's forced nightmares in order to personally torment him. That little detail in the game files just so happens to be files for Nightmare being titled Shadow Freddy, leading to strong connections between the Crying Child and Nightmare and Shadow Freddy since the game's release. It's such a strange idea, but this idea of Cassidy and the Crying Child tormenting Michael with their nightmarish dreamscapes may have actually been Cassidy testing out her torment ability before fully utilizing it on William in Ultimate Custom Night. Notice that if Cassidy is Nightmare Fredbear, then she would be doing most of the work, as Nightmare Fredbear appears a lot more than Nightmare. This is actually an afterthought since all my main points have been covered, but if you don't think Cassidy is the Vengeful Spirit due to their faces looking different, or the Vengeful Spirit being referred to as a he, then think about this. The faces not matching up may have something to do with the face maybe just being a projection and not actually Cassidy's face, while the he pronoun may be linked to the face being pictured as male or referring to the male Golden Freddy suit. Now, finally, I'm done rambling, but that doesn't mean you're done just yet. I'll finish off this video with two questions. One that's based on your reasoning, and the other being a yet unsolved mystery. The first question is, who do you think gets their happiest day here, Cassidy or the Crying Child? I personally think it's the Crying Child, but there is evidence from either side, so I'd like to hear your reasoning. The second question is, what is the Crying Child's name, since that's really the only remaining unsolved mystery relating to this? And maybe get a closer look at the logbook. There are other dashes that never really got concluded, so maybe keep looking on those. I expect to never hear the name Chris be brought up in the comments. Also, thank you to Cuban Fancy for the Golden Freddy render and Cassidy sprites. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video because I put a lot of work into it, and I can't wait to see you all in the next video. Don't stop pursuing the truth.